Today we are going to be focusing on what it takes to start a business in Kenya. We are going to be focusing on what are the key factors that you need to consider from a regulatory and compliance standpoint. My name is Magdalene Kariuki, an advocate of the High Court, and with me today I am joined by Mr. Adede, Mr. Wanjohi, and Mr. Alan Mzungu. Mr. Malachi Adede is the founding partner and chief executive of Liroja Services, a corporate governance consulting firm based out in Westlands, Nairobi. Malachi is a council member of the Institute of Certified Secretaries of Kenya, where he chairs the Audit, Risk and Compliance Committee. He is also a co-chairman of the Joint Liaison Committee, which is made up of the Business Registration Service, Law Society of Kenya, and the Institute of Certified Secretaries. The JLC is tasked with the review of reform agenda of the BRS and acts as a link between advocates and certified secretaries and the BRS on matters that affect business law reform agenda and day-to-day affairs of practitioners. Karibu sana Bwana Adede. To my immediate right is Mr. George Wanjohi. George has over 25 years of marketing experience across the East African market and has worked and lived in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda. In 2002, he co-founded the Saracen Marketing Group, which has offices in Nairobi, Kampala, and Dar es Salaam. He is currently the COO and is a great believer in entrepreneurship and the potential of youth. Karibu sana, Bwana Wanjohi.
Asante sana, Magdalene.
On my far right is Mr. Alan Mzungu. Alan is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and the managing partner at MMS Advocates. He was admitted to the bar in 2014, and his main areas of practice are general corporate and commercial law, banking and finance, property and conveyancing, litigation, and immigration law. Before founding MMS Advocates in 2016, Alan worked at some of the leading law firms in Kenya and Africa, namely MMC Asafo and Bowman's Law, formerly known as Colson Honey Advocates. His experience working at these firms exposed him to high-value clients and complex deals. It is this experience that he and his partners gained while working in leading law firms that he has enabled MMS to work with some exciting clients. The current portfolio of clients that MMS Advocates represents include major multinationals, NGOs, embassies, state corporations, and high net worth individuals. Karibu sana Bwana Mzungu.
Asante.
I would like to kick off today's conversation with you, Wanjohi. I'd like to hear, and I'm sure as would our viewers, what was your journey like? What were some of the considerations that you had in mind when choosing a partner? And then how did you decide on whether to register a company or a partnership?
It was very simple because we all used to work together. And what happened in the late 90s, the marketing industry in Kenya was all about Mzungus. And so we hit the black ceiling. And all of us ended up becoming MDs of divisions or deputy MDs of associated companies, but you could never be the MD. And so for us it was a very simple thing, black ceiling. So what do? We are Africans, we live in Africa, we know this market better, so we said let's set up our own business for our own freedom, to encourage more Africans to grow. And of course that went with a very cynical approach, which was to say, you've been earning a lot of money, but when you start a business, you won't earn money for the first 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
So we traded our money away for freedom. And that's actually how we put it in Saracen.
Quite interesting. There are a lot of, young people, who are faced with the crisis that is unemployment, and are then looking to create their own opportunities, as it were. That said, what are some, or potentially what would be the advice that you would give, these young people in terms of what to consider in terms of whether to register it as a business name, a partnership, or a company?
So I think the starting point, going back to the comment that Wanjohi made, is you need to have a service or a product that you can sell. In this case, they were doing marketing and they knew the market better than probably anyone else who could have been compared with them who was not operating in this market. Now, any one person, any young person who wants to become an entrepreneur, it means either one, you have a product that someone can buy and pay you money for it, or you have a professional skill that someone can pay you and consume that service from you. Now, you cannot graduate from school and overnight you're an expert. So anyone who wants to start a business, before you sit down and start asking yourself, what business do I start? You must first have a product or a service that is distinctly yours. Not taken from your employer, not taken from someone else. It has to be yours to give to people, and people buy that service or product from you. So the starting point, I don't know who can come out of school straight away and is an expert. It means you have to work with people, you have to, in turn, if you want to be a lawyer, an advocate, you have to go through the mandatory internship. By completing that does not make you an expert, so to speak. So I think it is in the process of building a skill set that is sellable, or if you are truly an entrepreneur, being able to come up with a product that can be sold in the market and people give you money for it, that then you can start asking the question, how do I formalize my business to take in the advantages of either limited liability partnership, limited liability company? Are you going to do it as a business name, or do you want to do it as a public limited company if you're that, if you need a lot of people in it? So I think the advice here is anyone who's going out for entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship means you have something that you are selling, or a service that you're selling.
You have made reference to limited company. You have made reference to a public limited company, and you have also made reference to an LLP. So I would like you, if you could kindly, just give, just a quick definition or quick distinction between these three.
So I think let me give a breakdown of what kind of businesses one can register as an entrepreneur, as a startup. So if you have a business that you are running that is uniquely you just want to get a business name to be associated with it, like you said, Dash Associates.
Yes.
You can opt to register it as a sole proprietor, which means you register what we call a business name. The business name is not separate from you. So it is you trading as Dash Associates. That's one person. So that's a business name as a sole proprietor. The second option is you still want to do a business name, but you are with your friend. So you and your friend register a partnership. That partnership is not separate from the two of you. So it is John and Jane trading as Dash Associates. So they are partners. So that partnership is not a legal person. So it is the two of you. If you go to the bank, it is Jane and Jane trading as Dash Associates. The next type, still on partnerships, you can register now what we call a limited partnership. Now, in the first and second examples, business name and a partnership, if your business loses 10 million, that's your loss individually, you share it. If you are alone, it's your loss. If you get 10 million, it's your money. Pretty much. Now the third example that I was talking about limited partnership is we say that Jane and John are in a partnership, but one of them has a limited liability, the other one does not. So if we lose, we have a partnership agreement that says that I'll take 80% of the losses. You only take up to 100,000 of liabilities. So if we have 20 million from the limited partner, we only get up to 100,000. The rest comes from the other partner. So that's what we call a limited partnership. The limited partnership is separate from the individuals, but it does not have limited liability. Which means if you lose 10 million, 20, 30 million, one of the partners has to pick the tab. Now, the next example is a limited liability partnership. So still the two of you doing business, but trading as a partnership, but now the concept that the law now introduces is the liability of the partnership itself is also limited. So if the partnership loses 100 million and your liability was set at a particular place, you cannot go over and above what the partnership can pay. So if the partnership is broke, people lose their money.
Yes.
They don't come to you as individuals to recover. So all those examples covers sole proprietorship and partnership. Then now moving to the realm of the company, you can have a company limited by shares. Company limited by shares can either be private or public. Now starting with a private company, now the law is easy. You as an individual, one person, can register a company as the director and the shareholder. So you don't need someone else for you to register a private company. Now once you register that company, if you said share capital is 100,000 and you lose 200,000, you're only exposed to that 100,000. If you had given the company that 100,000 as capital, you're done. The company or whoever cannot come back and get money out of you. So that's one of the benefits of having a limited company, that the liability is limited to the capital that you have taken in the company in terms of shares. If you've paid for those shares, that's it. You're waiting for the company to make money and pay you dividends. Now, a public company might not be a good example that someone who is doing a startup can register, because in the first place, the capital required to start business is 6 million. Anyone who's starting business does not have 6 million for minimum capital. So I think that's for now people who have done business after so many years, and they're now ready to go to collect money from the public in terms of shares with a view to be listed in the Nairobi Stock Exchange and all that. So in terms of relevance for what we are discussing today for startups, one can do business name as a sole proprietor, enter into any of the 3 different types of partnerships, or register a private company. The other types of entities that are available in law may not be relevant for this discussion.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for that comprehensive explanation. So
maybe if I may something, I can chime in.
Okay. Yeah.
No, so thank you, Malachi. You've covered it. I think in terms of doing business, those are the entities which are available. If you want to do something else, maybe not for profit, you now go into the realm of NGOs, societies, companies limited by guarantee, and what have you. But those are not relevant for today's topic.
I believe MMS Advocate is a partnership.
Yes, it is.
That's it. I believe the partners that perhaps you've had in the past, and perhaps the partners that you do have today, are people that you have known for some time, potentially even friends. That's it. I wanted to know, how did you have that very, perhaps would be difficult conversation in as far as ownership ratio is concerned? How did you decide, somebody either is a salaried partner or not? And with regards to ownership, how did you decide who then owns what percentage versus this other person?
All right, so thank you for that question, Magdalene. It's an excellent one. And as I respond, I think to set the tone is that conversation is always ongoing. So some things you can decide at the start. For instance, nominal value and who holds what percentage when you register. You must have it because you need to declare it as you register, as you submit your partnership deed. So that conversation was had at that time on the basis of the information available to us then. and the decision was made on a nominal basis that out of 100%, the three of us who were there then will each have an equal share. So it was not based on who brings in what money, who has how many clients. It was, as we start now, let's all be equal. Now, that conversation deepens as you continue now to do the business, because there is income coming in, there is clients coming in, and that impacts the profit sharing model. It is difficult to maintain the nominal value as your profit sharing ratio. So we have experimented, also use that word over time, with different ratios which are weighted, I would say. You ascribe a value to a certain performance aspect of the business. So for instance, you could ascribe bringing in clients a certain ratio and say this will be 10%. Actual revenue, you put it at a certain percentage. Management roles, business development, which may not mean bringing in clients, but activities which grow the brand. And then you come up with a mathematical formula which now allows you to distribute income or profit at the end of the year. So this, for us, is dynamic. Each year has different things which we assign more weight. So whereas business development might have been very key at the start, right now management and strategic planning and visual implementation might carry more weight. So it is a dynamic thing. Businesses and partners need to be open to review this every other time. And a good threshold is to say every year, you put it on the table for review. If it is okay, you maintain it. If you need to tweak a few things, then you do that.
Okay, quite interesting. Mwamuye, what has been your experience?
No, like all businesses, we started, basically with more or less it was shares. I think the only interesting thing that anyone starting a business might want to consider is, and I think you alluded to it earlier, the sort of persons you want to start a business with. And my experience has been that if you do not share values, then that business is doomed from day one. If you do not have the same ethos, that business is doomed from day one. So you need to find people with certain values that you share. But at the same time, then you need people with those three parts of ethos. One, they have to know what they're doing. Practical wisdom. You have to know the business. Two, arete, which is virtue or excellence. And of any kind, basically a good human being. And finally, you need to work with people who have goodwill towards not just you, but towards the business. Because I think a lot of people forget, the business is not you and me. The business is a thing on its own. And if you have ill intentions, and a lot of people get into business to make a lot of money, forgetting you have to feed this thing to get that money, then that's not somebody you're going to do business with. I hope I've answered some of your questions.
Yes, you have. To come back to you, Mwamuye, when you talk about now like having ethos and common values, which of course is very important, and I believe these do dictate perhaps also your rules of engagement and how you work together. Is it something that is written down, or is it like an unwritten rule, as it were?
Never ever have an unwritten rule. What is a contract? It's just a piece of paper to put down what you have agreed. But it's important because you're going to have disputes, whether you like it or not. We are all human. So what we did, we were 4 partners, 1 left. And what we did was to get a chairman who was actually a lawyer. He died a few months ago, but now we also have a shareholders agreement written with a board charter, all the necessary paperwork. But one of the things our shareholder agreement said was that should we get into a deadlock, our chairman can make that decision without referring to anyone, and we are bound to follow it. Kama mbaya, mbaya. Kama mzuri, mzuri. But because now he was the voice of reason, because he's not active in the business. And that's something I would advise anybody getting into a partnership. Always have that one guy who is completely neutral, whose only interest is the business and not you as individuals.
Okay, great, interesting. I'm not so sure about having, perhaps the person who is having almost like a veto power, as it were, being so far removed from the business. I don't know whether you faced any challenges with that, for instance, because you said that he was not necessarily involved in the day-to-day operations. So, like you said, come on, buyer, but sometimes it is buyer. So I just wanted to find out, is that something that perhaps you face? Were there any challenges in relation to that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And okay, you're right. I must qualify and say the person you're getting to be the arbitrator, as it were, must obviously be somebody who is wise, somebody who is intelligent, somebody who is clever. And I think Mr. Adede will say a bit more about that when it comes to governance. May I hand it over to you, sir?
Yes. Please.
So I think what Wanjoy is talking about as having been implemented is what in the circles of boardrooms, that's what is called independent chairman, or board independence. So this is where the decision makers or the key decision maker is not conflicted with the decision being made, so that whatever decision they make is objective. So if you are 3 partners and you are drawing a salary from the business and a decision needs to be made where salaries, costs needs to be reduced, you are conflicted because this is going to affect you personally. So you'd rather delay it at the expense of the business. So you'd want someone to look at the need of the business objectively on cost cutting and help in making the right decision for the business. So Wanjoy did mention that the business is separate from the actors, from those who are within the business. So you are one person, the business is a separate being altogether from you. So when that is understood, then the need for objectivity in decision making then comes in. Now, if you are talking about partnership in the context of making decisions as partners, that can be defined in your partnership deed and how to bring in independent decision making mechanisms. In the context of companies, this can come in either in the articles of association of the company, defining the rules on how directors do their work, or it can come in the shareholders agreement, which he also alluded that they actually have to define this. So the ability, this is not something you do after the fact. This is something you do when you are still in peace. You don't do this in times of war, when now you are not talking with each other, because then it beats the purpose. So when one is starting a business and you have identified the kind of people you want to do business with, it's then important to also look at, should things go south, contrary to everyone's expectation, and hard decisions need to be made, how will you go about it? So that addresses that issue of independence.
Good. When I did it, actually did have a question for you, just as a follow-up to that conversation, is, as part of the conversations, whether it is profit sharing or, like conflict resolution, among it, of course, is conversations around how to structure the business. So how important is it to have sight of the potential of growth and expansion, as you talk about, then beyond the borders of the country, to have at the back of your mind as you're deciding on a structure of a company?
So it is interesting you are talking about structuring for growth, because growth starts from within. I think when you are starting a business, you realize that very fast you will need to grow yourselves, so that someone who had never been a chief executive now becomes the CEO of this small company that you have, and that makes immense demands on your time, on your energy, on your ability to learn very fast on the job. Any mistakes you make today, you see the impact tomorrow in terms of the brand, in terms of cash flow issues, in terms of customer management issues. All this you have to deal with them on the go. So I think the first thing that an entrepreneur or a startup needs to look into is, how do we grow our business in terms of our technical capacity, in terms of quality of service or quality of product. So you start building the business from inside out, even before you start thinking of regional growth, because you cannot grow regionally if your product is not good locally.
Okay, that's good.
So I think it goes without saying that to grow, you have to improve your governance structures, you have to improve your product development, you have to improve the quality of your team as you look into growing the business. Once that is done, issues like balance sheet management, cash flow management, those will then follow in the backbone of the DNA of the company, which now these founders are putting together.
Okay. So, would you say that Adede's, more or less perception, or as you told with his response, really speaks to the journey of your company?
100%. 100%, yes. And to add on to that slightly, and Mwamuye hates that phrase to add on to that, but a lot of people get into business, as I said, I think, especially young guys, because I'm going to make a lot of money. And yeah, it's good to make money, but you have to think beyond that. So some of the things that when we were starting, we started in our early 30s. And when we were starting, we asked ourselves just a few questions. One, what if the business doesn't work? What do we do? Two, what if one of us, a partner, a key person, dies? What are we going to do? What if somebody wants to leave? What if somebody is not performing? We have 4 partners, one guy just hangs around playing golf, for example. What if somebody steals? And those are questions we asked ourselves at the beginning. But the single biggest one that took us a lot of time, I remember, and we went for a lot of counseling from people, was what if the business succeeds? And that was the scariest question. And that, and I remember, took us, even as we started, it took us a few years to actually get to grips with it. Because when money comes, as Adede mentioned, and I think also Alan mentioned in passing at the beginning, when money comes, problems come. Bottom line. Yeah, so I don't know whether maybe Alan is the one to talk about that section, because he's the lawyer.
All right, so thank you, Joy, for that. I think it's also a human thing. The people you work with, in as much as the business is separate, your partners are individuals. The synergy between the partners is really key as to what kind of culture you bring into the business. And now tying this with growth, Adede spoke very well to say you must build yourself internally. So as you begin, the key questions which have to be asked and have to be answered, or at least considered even for a long period, is do you want as partners, the people you currently have? If you were to do very well, will you be okay with the kind of partners you started off with? I think that's a very important question which a lot of businesses need to ask before they start, because most times you come together because of convenience. You went to school with so-and-so, and now they live within a geographical area where you live. So you're 4 of you in Nairobi, you meet up so often for a drink, and you're like, okay, we spent too much money drinking, could we put some of this here in something? Or you're all lawyers, you hang out together, and you're like, okay, George hit the black ceiling. Some of us associates, you just hit some ceiling. Yeah. Some invincible one, some salary ceiling, say. You get promotion, senior, partner, but in terms of actual benefits to you, it means very little. And you decide, why don't you try our own thing? But you haven't considered if these are the people who, for the long term, you can stay together to do business. And for me and for us, what we've come to find is the meeting of the minds. The meeting of the minds when you start the business is more important than even rushing to sign documents which say your targets are so and so, your client targets are so and so, your revenue targets are so and so. So very key to set out the dispute resolution, very key to have these key documents, partnership deed, the actual registration documents. But more than that, where the company goes depends on the synergy of who you're with. So there has to be a meeting of the minds. Just say some people come in to just make a lot of money. Some people come in with ill motives. They know Alan is very good at this. Adede is very good at this. I will ride on their collective, brilliance in this area and make money, and then maybe go out and do my own thing. So it is very important as you come in that yourself as an individual, you know, you are very positive wishes, and you wish well your partner. So when you think of your partner, you will not do anything to want to harm them, or that will be unfair, or that if done to you, then you will also feel not very well. So with that, then a lot of the things which you try to tie in with documentation, remember documentation is only enforced after the wrong.
Yeah.
So I've stolen money, then you run into court to say he stole money, he was a partner, but I've already stolen. You're probably not even going to be able to fund your legal fees to chase me. So the part where now, what will stop me from doing that? When I am a single signatory, or each of us is a single signatory, what will stop Adede, for instance, from going to the account? There's been a big payout from sweeping that and moving to Uganda. So that is not the documentation.
Example.
Yeah.
So that's not the documentation. That is the human in you, and you having a feel for what you want to do and to achieve with these people who you've come together to start. So for us, we've been at it, I think, 7 years now with my partners. A few have come and go, and over time, I think what I've learned is the ones who have remained up to now, it's not the documentation. It's very key, but it's that we wish each other well. We've seen the capacity each of us has, and like George says, you don't make money even for 10 years. The business does. You see your cash flows, but you put it back in the business, you invest. You may not even make the salary you used to make at your last job for many years.
Yes.
But you see the future, and you see that the money will come, and you're happy with the vision as it grows. You're happy with the people who are helping you grow the vision, and as you grow, so you empower those who you bring on board as as staff, as key helpers, and it's inevitable to grow. Now that's why you can think about Uganda or regional. After now you settle down internally. Partners have to be settled. Then partners are settled, the business is settled, clients are settled. You figured out your expertise, the place where you excel. And the leadership from the top now focuses on those areas where you excel, and growth is almost inevitable from there.
Okay, fantastic, fabulous.
So I just want to follow up comment on what Alan said. He said, when you leave, if you are employed and you come into entrepreneurship, you may not make money as an individual, but the business may make money. So I think it is important to then separate that the business's money is not your money.
Yes.
So that's why you are not making money. So the business may make money, but the business needs that money to be plowed back. And if you take that money from the business, then in effect you are shooting the business in the foot. So I think it's important to note. But for those who are going out into entrepreneurship, probably the business will make money to the point that you want to take all of it and run. But if you do that, then you kill the dream.
Okay.
And you're right, the business's money is not your money.
It's not
In fact, my advice, and now I'm going to look at the camera, my advice to you guys starting, the first person you hire is a lawyer, the second person is an accountant. Those two people, to start separating the business's money from yours. You can be broke and the business has 10 million bob in the bank, but it's not your money.
So that's it, and perhaps I can begin with you, Alan, on this one. Having started your law firm fairly young, I believe in your 20s, did you have, or maybe did you think of maybe engaging in mentors, or with mentors, or perhaps, just working with potentially a brain trust that you potentially even, consult even to date? And, what has been your experience on that?
All right, so I think we started young, but we started with experience. First, you must develop yourself. I didn't say you must sell something. When you come out of school, you're not an expert. So by the time we started, I'd already worked for 7 years in different capacities with different law firms, and I'd taken time to learn. And over that period, the people I interacted with, most of them I still talk to. Most of them I still consult. On a daily basis, I have a scenario where I have to run by certain people who I call my seniors in the profession, and I hold them with very high regard. So it is important, and I think you can't operate without a senior, or whatever it is we call it in a business, someone who's ahead of you, someone who's seen more of the runway than you have, because then you don't have to experience their mistakes yourself. And also in key decisions, it's very important to run it by such individuals. They come in very handy because of their wisdom that they've collected over time. They come in very handy because of their perspective, what you may think of and what you can come to a decision about based on your limited information. Sometimes you don't even know what you don't know that you require to make a decision. So such individuals see the gaps. They plug the gaps for you. They hold your hand, and it's always good to be humble and teachable. Be humble and teachable. I don't think any of us can reach a place where we say they've made enough money or they've had enough experience or they know enough to not learn from someone else, even George.
Yeah, good. And I think perhaps we would like to throw the ball back to you, Adede, is just following up on that conversation or that question is, what if I'm not a professional? Because he's made reference to, okay, I'm coming, having had this background, a lot of the mentors that you're making reference to, I believe, are people that you had an opportunity to work with in this particular profession. So what if I am not a professional?
So give me a scenario.
What
kind of person do you have in mind?
Let's say I only got to Form 4. I unfortunately did not manage to either get a calling letter or did not have fees to progress with tertiary education. I, however, went somewhere and upskilled, and I've gotten this skill set, and I have something.
So which skill?
So let's say it's something like I am maybe let's say I'm even a graphic designer. So I'm a graphic designer. I've gone to school. I have upskilled, and this is what I have, and boom. I hit the job market, and then I am walking on the streets of Nairobi. I'm not able to get a job, and then I decided, okay, hold on, I could register a sole proprietorship and run my own gig. However, how do I go about this? Who could I potentially reach out to have a conversation with? And also keeping in mind that perhaps people within my society, and my society in this instance could be my parents, could be my aunties, could be my uncles. None of them has ever set up a business. They've all been employed. So
you look at in the context that you say that there will always be people who came before you in the graphic design industry, and it is your job to find them out. They will not find you because you are still a nobody. So look for forums where graphic designers meet. For if there is anything to be done pro bono for graphic design that makes you meet with them, by all means do it. Now, I started a company secretarial firm. I had been employed for 11 years before that. Then left employment and went into my own practice. Now, all of a sudden, all decision starts and stops with me. Now, there are things that my former boss did without consultation with me. I had no idea. But now I have to make those decisions. Now, in my network, I know quite a number of people who are running their own firms, who I can call, and if they are busy, I am confident they will call me back because I have invested in that relationship. So anyone who is starting out to be an entrepreneur, you must invest in relationships. Some people call them networks. Now, if I was a graphic designer, I will find out everywhere these designers meet. Me, I found joint liaison committee where lawyers, company secretaries, and business registration services meet. I go there, ask my questions, raise my voice. People who go there know me. If tomorrow you call them, they respond. If you are the kind of graphic designer who has the latest trends, knows who is who, people will start reaching out to you, and that's how you create your network. Now, those networks might not be monetized immediately. Me knowing Alan today might not lead to a client referral today, but based on the relationship we have over time, he may find a client and say, hey, this client is perfect for Adede. Then he sends that client my way. Now, if I have 100 of Alans in my life, that means at any one given time, I have 100 potential referrals my way. Now, anyone who is starting a business, first, you must know what you're doing. If you can't start graphics design if you have no idea what graphics design is, so invest in yourself. teach yourself. Have a teachable spirit. Be able to abandon everything else you are doing if there's a better way of doing the same. And then as you do that, you create your networks, and those networks can be monetized later. You create the networks not for today. If I come to you and it is apparent that the only reason I'm coming to you is to make money for myself, you will not be open to that relationship. You will close, because you know, if I take work from you, you are losing, I am gaining. But if I present myself to be of service to you, whatever service it is, in our professional capacity, then you giving me work is not a loss to you. It's a gain to me, yes, but it's not a loss to you. So in that way, you get to build a business practice. So all professional services, be it law, be it accounting, be it company secretarial, be it graphics design, you are selling a service. And that service, first you work on it, then you create the network that will feed you referrals. I'm not sure there's a service industry that is not based on referrals.
That is true. That is absolutely right.
Yeah.
I don't know, Anthony, if you have anything to add to that.
No, it's just to emphasize again, because yes, today's conversation, we are all service providers. But the fact of the matter is, even if you want to go into trade, so you want to open a butchery, there was a butcher there before you. There's a guy who knows how to buy cows, he knows how to negotiate. There's always somebody who knows more stuff than you do. Those are your mentors. Those are the guys you're looking for. So don't think it just has to be you didn't go to university or you don't have the internet. Or even if you're, in the old days they used to have apprenticeships, right?
Yes.
So to learn how to build a house in Sharks, you work and there's always that local village builder.
Yes,
Foodie. You work under him for 10 years and you can go solo. That's mentorship.
Yes.
And that's, the whole point is there's always somebody who came before you who's better than you. Then number two, there are people with different skills that you will not have and you do not need to have. So you set up your business. You do not need to understand accounting. Hire an accountant or get a friend of yours to help you with that. You do not need to know the law. The lawyers are here. Company secretaries are here. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. And I hope for all of us, or for everyone who is watching us, I hope you're taking note of the nuggets of wisdom that are being shared with us today. You know, the first being, be humble, be teachable. The second is the money that belongs to the entity or the business is not your personal money. So just because there's 500,000, 1,000,000, 50,000 in the bank account, that is the entity's money, not your personal money. And the other thing is your network is your net worth. And I really love that, because I believe this is something that a lot of young people struggle with. There's always been, I believe, this perception or misconception, as it were, that in order to get this job, in order to get this business, I need to know someone. Why is it that then you are not making that effort to get to know these people? Yeah, so perhaps I could also just give you a brief story about myself, just tamarking in the streets of Nairobi. When I finished campus, I believe I was among the lucky few in my class who had 3 job offers. And this is even before graduation. And the reason why that was is because I took time to invest in the relationships that I had. And these relationships included the relationships with my lecturers, the relationships with my supervisors, that is my dissertation supervisors. I took time to invest in relationships with the people that I had interned for. So I really liked what you said, when you said, if you're there to provide a service, yeah, make sure that you do it and do it well, because at the end of the day, it's going to pay off. So I think then we can move forward to the next part of the segment. And in this regard, I'd like us to then concentrate perhaps on a different aspects with regards to startups. So in this particular segment, we're going to be looking at what are some of the basic frameworks that we need to have in mind when we're setting up a startup. So in this second half of the segment, I'd like us to go through what are some of the basic structures that we need to have at the back of our minds in setting up a startup when we talk about control. decision making, resolving deadlocks, managing exits, and even bringing on board new investors. And with that, I'd like to invite Bwana Dede to take us through that, at least from a corporate governance perspective. And then I will thereafter be inviting Bwana Wanjohi to also just take us through what has been his experience in that respect. And then I'd also like to invite Alan thereafter just to take us through from a legal standpoint, what does that look like? So over to you.
I think my comments are going to be in the context of startups. So nothing flashy in terms of exits, addressing deadlocks and all that. So in the context of you have a partnership, you've registered a partnership, some of the controls you need to put in place is do not leave the assets of the partnership in control of one person. The example that was given earlier on where you are 3-4 partners, but one person can sign a loan for everything. So which means if you disagree, the first person to the bank gets off with everything, pretty much. So it's called authority matrix or delegation of authority. You can say we are 3. If we are taking up to 200,000, a partner can sign a loan per month, but anything above that, between 200 and 500, 2 partners sign. Anything above $1 million, everyone must sign. So in a way, you are fencing the level of loss that you can make at any one given time because of dishonesty or you've disagreed or whatever reason. Now, when you're starting, when everyone is happy and there's disclosure, there's no problem. But you realize these things are important when now we're not talking to each other. Or someone has decided to go to Uganda. Now, that's for partnership. Secondly, you need to address in a partner. You need to have a partnership agreement. That goes without saying. That will define how you relate with each other. If issues of performance, if someone is not performing well, how do you treat it? You need to have a high level you need to cover it at high level. Now, you talked about, Alan talked about the revenue sharing models. Like, you will find if you are 2-3 people, one person will be more excellent than others. Definitely, you will not be at par. So, starting at par where everyone holds equally is good for starting. But as you go along, you realize there will be someone who will be more successful in one area of the business, and that area of the business might be smaller, but making more money than the rest of the people combined. Now that brings in the need to now revisit how do you share your revenues, and people have to be level-headed. Yes, you are all in the business, but you started as equals, but down the road, you are not going to be equals. Now, having that ability to reflect and either enlarge the pie or make the pie accommodate all of you, then becomes very useful. And these are things that can be defined in the partnership agreement. Now, if it gets to a time where someone has to exit, how? Now, someone can exit by being kicked out, or they can just decide on their own volition, I've had enough, I'm walking away. So you need to provide for this. What happens at the partnership level? Now, moving from partnership to companies, the discussion is not exactly the same, but the underlying principles cut across the board. The businesses of the company, even though you contributed as a shareholder, you don't have to be a director. In partnership, you have to be a partner. And the partners are the ones managing the business. In companies, if you contributed as a shareholder, you don't have to be a director. If you are not qualified and you have no idea what being a director is, it's best you find people to act as directors to protect your interest. And especially, for example, we talked about the example of a graphics designer. If you have started a business doing graphics design, and you've started getting contracts from major players in the market, it might be useful for you to get someone who can act as a role model to you to advise you on how to do business. because at the end of the day, you are in the business of providing services, and those services have to meet the needs of the people who you are providing them for. So whether you get the contracts from KQ, from National Media, from Standard Group, or from whoever is giving out these contracts for graphics design, if you don't do your work, next time they're giving out that work, you're not getting. And at the same time, he said one of the people you need to talk to is Alan. In your structure in your contract,
Yes.
if your contracts are poorly structured, you are actually exposing the business to lawsuits and claims that can drive you out of business sooner than you can cash out that check. So I think it's important, if you've decided to run a business, think of how to handle the money. Those are the authority limits and controls. Think about how you're going to make the decisions and who is going to make those decisions. Now, once you've addressed that, then now focus on improving your services to your customers.
Great, brilliant. Yes, Brother Anjoli.
No, I mean, then I'll summarize it. Because, yeah, you're employed by the business. The fact that you own it doesn't mean that you're bigger than it. Even if it's a partnership, I think you need to consider yourself an employee of that business. And that will help you get your head into the right space. And that will help you avoid, misusing money. That will help you think strategically. If it's a company like in our company, we are shareholders, we also work there, the three of us, but we also have employment contracts, which actually have targets, and you can either earn or not earn. So, and that's the way you keep a business going.
Great. Alan?
So I'll make it easy for startup, because you may not have access to a lawyer at the time you're thinking about it. You've met on the ground somewhere and you're just discussing it. Two key things to have in mind. In any agreement, because you're going to have an agreement as partners, how you deal with things. In any agreement, there's interests and risks. So interest, this is the selfish part. What is my interest in this? Each individual, what is the interest you have in the business? You're the graphic designer, so of course you want to practice your art. That's your interest, you want to earn money from it. Someone else may just have the money. They think, I think there's something good here, let me get in early. That's the interest this person has. He has no idea how to run the business. He has no part in the vision, but they want to make that money. So they put in the money, but they don't want to be a director, they don't need to be a director, they don't need to run anything. There's other people who are not present with you, but they have interest. The people who give you business, their interest is that their work is done properly. You deliver the quality which they've entrusted for you to do. So those interests in your discussions, in your negotiations, have to be provided for. So if you have no access to a lawyer at that time, just make sure you consider each of those interests and do the basic clause in each of them. So you can say, we will all, or Adede will be the graphic designer. He will look for clients, he will deliver on this. Magdalene will bring in a certain amount of money for shares. She will not make a decision on anything. She will not take a vote on anything. She will not do the day-to-day running. George will be the business development and admin. He will somehow be part of the business to bring on board clients and also run the business. And that's the interest which you're taking care of. Two is risk. The risk element here, Adede has alluded to. You need to see where things will go wrong. You need to see where those interests could be interfered with and what will be lost as a result of that. So the risk could be internal. The three of you or the founders, each not working out between the three of you or however many you are. So that's a deadlock situation. That's a risk. How do you mitigate? How do you make that impact minimal? So when Joy said for them they had a third party who they entrusted that decision to, if you get to a deadlock. It is important to have that. It is important to have some way to break a deadlock. It cannot be allowed to continue. So that's one of the risks you think about. Another risk is also the business itself going under. You may have all the hopes and put in all the effort, but the business does not work out. So someone could lose their money. Magdalene has put in money. Adede has put in time. So what happens in such a case? How would you decide what to do? Do you press on? Do you go seek more resources to put into the business? Or do you sit to make that decision based on what information you have? Or do you unwind? Because it is possible sometimes the business just doesn't work, and you have to undo that. You have to stop, and you have to think about something else. So that's another risk. There are many other risks. Partners exiting, or partners becoming hostile. Becoming hostile, I mean, this person was part of the founders, and now maybe has gone to do a competing business, while they are still officially part of the business. Or they have even taken from the business part of the clients that were of the business, and they're going to do a competing business. So what do you do in such a scenario where those who you came to do this together are now in quotes your enemies? So do not think of a very complicated document. Don't Google and pick templates to do your agreement. Word for word, write it yourself in your own language, having these two key things in mind. What interest does each of you have in this business as you come together? What risks are you trying to mitigate against? And then that guides what you will definitely end up with. If you end up with 2 pages, that's fine. You will have thought about what the risks, you will have thought about the interest you need to protect. And so that's my advice.
I think that's really good, just in terms of simplifying, the process, and because I know for a lot of people, then as they think about a startup, they start thinking, okay, so if I was to give the example of Mwamuye here, he said the first person I need to think of hiring is a lawyer, and secondly an accountant. And I start thinking, okay, I do not have this business, I don't have capital even for that. So what do I do? And I really like that, look and read through the template that has been provided by Google, but at the same time, you can then just reduce it and write it in your own words. I really like that. But that said, I really also like what you made reference to in terms of risks, looking at what are the interests vis-a-vis the risks here. And there's one in particular that you made reference to, in the event that you disagree, because I think this is a real risk. You could have been best of friends. There are times where it could even be your spouses. You disagree, and it's in a major falling out. So from, I think, a corporate governance perspective, what would that mean for Nadede?
I think if the business was built, the backbone for the business is the two of you working together, and you've fallen out, then the sooner you realize that business is done, the better for you. If the business was independent of what the two of you are doing, then that business can still continue with one of you being a silent partner and the other actively furthering the interests of the company. Take, for example, if you're starting a law firm, there's no way you can run a law firm if both partners are not bringing their best to the table. And there is no partner who will do the work, and then at the end of the day share the loot with a silent partner. It's not a working model. But if you were, for example, a graphics designer, you can start a company where the silent partner buys the machinery required, the printers required, and then the graphics designer actually does the work. Now, it's sad that professional services, like being a lawyer, being a company secretary, or which one else, you can't register them as a company, limited by share auditors. So it has to be a partnership between you and others. So if that professional service is what you want to do as a startup, then you are restricted to partnership, and you are restricted to finding people who you can work with in the long term. And if not, then building exit clauses. If this happens, we kick so-and-so out, or if so-and-so attains a certain level of age or something, they retire, or something that makes it easy for someone to get out of the business with their respect intact. You don't want to make it in such a way that when we know we've separated with Alan, everyone knows that I was the bad apple I think it should be good. The separation process itself should be, it's possible for it to be a good process that has been well thought out. So depending on the type of business one is starting up, some of them, if the partners disagree, that's the end of the business.
Okay.
But there are other businesses that you can do even if you've not agreed in principle with your partner. And you need to then ring-fence decision making in such cases to ensure that the interests that Alan was talking about are still looked into, even for those people who are not participating in the day-to-day running of the business.
Okay. Okay, and I think maybe just as a follow-up to that is, well, it's good that we could have written it in, at the onset, because I believe, and I don't know that it was her for Wanjohi who said, it is good to write these things in when, things are still peaceful, that is not at the time of war. And I couldn't agree with you more. But what happens where it is a business that we would like to both see continue, not necessarily dissolve. So I just wanted to find out, are there any documents, potentially, maybe Alan, you can step in here, are there any documents that I potentially need to file, with the company registrar? If, for instance, we have agreed that this person will no longer act as a director, or it's that they will be stepping down from the company for, with regards to any position that they might be holding. And perhaps you could also distinguish maybe it is for which type of entity where such a requirement would be mandated.
All right. So thank you, Magda. In terms of the law, there's very little which is prescribed that you cannot contract yourself. So instead of leaving it for implication of the law, all of these steps where you've asked me what would be required for that to happen, then you can contract at the beginning, where you've said how a partner can exit, how a partner can, or how a shareholder maybe can be bought out, and the legal part becomes formality. Yeah? So if it is resolutions which you pass at a board meeting, you do that, and then the company secretary is given authority to go and make the filings. So you have a resignation letter from the exiting director. They will indemnify the company, and they will confirm they have no outstanding liabilities with the company, and they will walk away at that level. And then you file those together with some prescribed forms at the company's registry. Now it's online, and that becomes formal. But the step to the decision, that is internal. I think it is best if you put that in your memorandum and articles. It's best you put that in a shareholders agreement, and any document which, depending on the entity you're dealing with, you can have at the point you're starting, so that you have control of the process. You are not bound to start figuring out what is the implied scenario here, what does the law require of us if we have not agreed. That's I think the neatest way to do it.
Okay. Good.
I think there is a comment I wanted to make. The expensiveness of lawyers and company secretaries. Yeah. A lot of people say that, oh, I can't do this because lawyers are expensive, having a company secretary is expensive. But at the end of the day, what you will lose in the business far exceeds what you will pay a lawyer or a company secretary to put your house in order. So take, for example, you are getting into a contract. You didn't get a lawyer involved because it was expensive. But you get the contract, which maybe for discussion's sake, it's 250,000. You've done the work. But there was a clause, because you didn't have your own lawyer, but the other side protected themselves, such that if there was even a day delay in delivery, they have a right not to pay. You never knew. You are not a lawyer yourself, so you couldn't have picked that up. Now, for that 250,000 contract, the amount that you could have paid your lawyer, who also understands you're a startup, could have been something as close to 10,000 or 20,000 or 30,000, depending on the caliber of the lawyer you are dealing with. So if you want, using legal services does not mean you go to the premium service provider. You pick a lawyer who matches your budget, and they're there in the market. It might not be MMS, but the higher you go in the hierarchy, it's presumed the better the lawyers, the better the service, the more experienced they are, the more networks they have. So if you want to use a lawyer, if you cannot afford a firm, then at least get an advocate, those who can look at your document to give you the assurance that this is good. Now, in my personal experience, I know there are people I can't take as clients, as company secretaries, because they can't afford my fees. But there's someone else who can take a tenth of what I am asking for. Why don't they look for that person? And now, you can tell me lawyers are expensive because you talked to this lawyer from this law firm. But if you are keen in getting a lawyer, you can get, what is the lowest fee lawyers charge? Some would even do some work pro bono. Alan said if they do pro bono, you never know, you could be the pro bono candidate. Maybe your networks are right.
Yes.
So I think using professional service is expensive, is a disservice to the business itself or the startup founder.
And if I may just jump in here, and I kind of get it also when you're young, you're 24 years old, you can't afford a lawyer, even if it was $1,000. Fine, then get your uncle or get your parents or get that parish priest or somebody that both of you or your partners will agree that you mutually respect and that you can listen to. And that, as Alan was saying, you write it in your own words and then have this authority figure, your mother or the priest or whoever, to be now the person who is actually mentoring you. And that, I think, works. Yeah. So I'm just saying, there's always somebody, as Adele is saying, as Alan is saying, as Magdalene is saying, there's always somebody you can work with to get your minds into that one space.
And I think to allay fears that we are expensive, we have a lot of flexibility. I can say that because we have CSR programs where we, in some instances, just do either low bono. Low bono is where you at least meet the costs. And we won't go out of pocket for you, but we'll give our time, we'll give our expertise. And also, we consider sometimes taking up cases completely pro bono for human reasons. So for instance, if someone is going through hard times with their family at home, let's say a husband, now that there's a break the bias. So a husband is being abused at the house, and they need legal services desperately to be guided on how they can be protected. At that time, we won't ask you to instantly meet a certain payment, but if you meet the case scenario where you're eligible for our services as an assistance to you, we will be happy to do that. And we do that. We work with an organization called Trust Law for those who are impact investment, not for profit. Look that up. You'll find lawyers ready to support you for low bono or pro bono. So approach us, we'll talk to you. Like Wanjoyi, he got Nani Mungai, who I got to work with, brilliant mind, also very good at negotiating his fees. So if he got 7%, and Wanjoyi says that was way below what he ought to be paid, he's a flexible man, and he was a flexible man, and we are flexible. We're able to get into arrangements where they can work for you.
So I think with that said, I'd like to invite this distinguished panelists to just give their parting shots with regards to today's topic. Just as a way of your final advice to someone who is raring to go to start their business. I'll begin with you, Bernadette.
If you are raring to go and start your business, you need to know whether it's going to be a limited liability company, and if that business will expose you to a large extent to assume liability for your clients, then it's best to go limited company way. But if it's a business that does not expose you, you can go either sole proprietor or go partnership way. That is if you have someone else you're working with. Now, there is an adage that I find very useful. Adage is a saying, a wise saying, that compliance is non-negotiable. if you are doing business and you are receiving money for doing business, you need to know what obligations that company has, that business has. If it is filings with the Registrar of Companies, those must be done. If it is filing with Kenya Revenue Authority, non-negotiable, you must do it. If it is paying employees, if it is dealing with other state agencies as part of compliance, those ones are non-negotiable, and ignorance is no defense. So you make sure you cover the side of compliance so that you can do your business and grow it without looking over your shoulders on what is going to come up with you. I do say that there are lawyers out there, there are company secretaries out there who will be happy to assist you. Your budget might not allow you to get the most prestige firms in the market, but I am sure there is someone through your family circles or professional circles who can always connect you to someone who can help you go through the compliance landscape so that your business can prosper while remaining compliant.
If you're ready to start business, if you want to go right now today, you must know what you're doing. You must plan to know what you're going to do if you don't know. Now, seek the right advice, get services which you pay for. Don't always seek favors. Those can cost you also. So get the right professionals on board, depending on the line of business you're in. Seek the right advice, follow that advice, implement it in good time, and it will save you a lot of pain much later. And not just pain, it will also set you up for growth, which you may not have anticipated if it comes sooner than you thought. That's my parting shot.
Number one is work to each other's strengths with your partners if you start a business. That means basically do not go into business with people who are not clever. Ideally, you should look for people who are cleverer than you, because then you learn from each other and you help each other. But fundamentally, it's what I said earlier, values. Work with people who have similar values. When we were starting our business, a very wise friend of ours told us, much older man now, and he told us, you cannot do a good deal with a bad person. So find the people with the right values, be very clear on where you're going, work to each other's strengths, and be prepared to walk away if it's not working out. That's it.
Fantastic. I could not have wrapped this up better. So thank you so much to our viewers, and thank you once again to our distinguished panelists for the day. And I hope to be seeing you soon here again. Asante sana.